still early in January, so some of you might still be on holiday. But for many people, this is the week you go back to the office, you set up your home office, and you start to get back to work. The clients start calling again about this time, don't they? So that transition from holiday brain to back to work, your normal routine brain, it can be a slight struggle. But an added stress on some people is trying to cope with the different work personalities that you encounter in the office. Dr. Rachel Hannam is the director of North Brisbane Psychologists and can hopefully help us to deal with some of these issues. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Ashwin. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Now, a lot of us will be going back to work this week. Where do we start with? What's a good mental frame of mind to steel yourself to get back to the office?
I think a good frame of mind when you're about to make any sort of transition is to set an intention. So think about what do I want to do today, this week? So think about your goals, but also think about your values. What kind of person do I want to be when I go into work? Because who we are on holidays, as you pointed out, might be kind of a different version of ourselves to how we are in other settings and how we are at work. We need to think about what kind of person do I want to be when I walk back through those doors, as well as what do I want to get done.
Does that also prevent you from just going through the motions if you think about those big picture ideas like my intention and my values?
It does, right, because one of the strategies I give to my clients is intention setting in the morning and then gratitude or reflection practice in the evening or at night. So what went well today or what am I grateful for? Both of those practices, intention setting and gratitude, make us more mindful, more conscious and more deliberate because, as you say, otherwise we're just on autopilot and we're just going through the motions. And it's better if we go in consciously, paying more attention and aligning our behaviour with our values.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's easier to deal with the doldrums and the boredom and the difficulties if you're going somewhere, if it's part of a bigger plan. So it can actually make the difficulties of life easier if you feel like you're going somewhere decent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have some sense of control, although we never have complete control, but we do have partial control, certainly over our own mind and our own behaviour. And that's a much better feeling than walking back in to a place and feeling like we have no control. I call it the psychology of choice. We never don't have choice. We always have some choice. We just have to recognise that and decide how we want to be.
Okay, so we're off to a good start then. We've got our intention. We have set up a bit of a plan. We've determined the kind of person we want to be, the values question. Now we actually meet other human beings, different personality types. Can you take us into some of the workplace personality types that we might encounter and good ways to deal with them?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, personality is a very broad term. You know, we have common personality traits that we're all familiar with, like introversion, extroversion, open-mindedness, agreeableness, and these kind of things will affect how we are in the workplace. And then we have our learning and conditioning. You know, some people at work are climbers, aren't they? They want to get ahead, they're ambitious, they want to assert their authority quite legitimately sometimes. They're natural leaders perhaps. And others just kind of work to live and are not so ambitious. And we've got the quiet quitters. You know, that's a phrase that's come into the vernacular in recent years. They're present, but they're not really engaged. And yeah, when we go back to work, go into any workplace, we encounter a myriad of different mindsets, attitudes, and personalities. And I have an organisation that I run, which has about 60 people in it. So, I'm thinking about my own experience when I say that and how I need to adapt my style to different personalities and to different, people in terms of the stages they're at in their career and how ambitious they might be, the strength of their growth needs is one way they say it in psychology. So there's a lot. Plus we need to deal with difficult and challenging behaviours from others, which is probably the thing most people find most stressful.
So personality is quite a broad topic. So let's hone in on behaviours, the kind of common workplace issues that you deal with as a psychologist, that people come to you from their workplace. What are the kind of things people typically struggle with and what kind of advice could you give to them?
There are a few usual suspects. One of them is exclusion, feeling like you've been left out of processes, projects, decision-making. That's a common one I see when I go and consult to companies and businesses, because we all want to feel like we have a voice and we've been included. But that's such a core need, right, to feel valued, to feel like we matter, we've been heard. And so when we don't have a say, that is deeply wounding for many people. So that's a common issue that I see. And the other issue is conflict. Conflict around values, priorities. People don't have shared clarity about processes and procedures and priorities. So often we put down conflict in the workplace to personality clashes when actually it's just a lack of shared clarity. So I talk a lot to managers about creating clear processes and clear guidelines for and systems, because so much conflict can arise out of that lack of clarity.
So if you do find yourself in a conflict situation, you would suggest trying to get clarity with a manager, and maybe not necessarily always dealing with it directly with the person you're in conflict with, but approach the manager, try to get some clarity from above?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the situation. If we can approach our colleague and ask to sit down and speak calmly about our misunderstanding, what are you needing and here's what I'm needing, and have that conversation, great, let's deal with it at a local level. Sometimes people don't trust that that's possible, and then they need to get a third party like a manager or HR person to come in and support that dialogue.
That issue of exclusion that you mentioned earlier, I think it can be quite hard if you feel a lot of the company is excluding you and your managers are excluding you. Is that a situation where often people end up having to leave rather than trying to fix such a complex issue?
Yeah, it is. And I do a lot of workplace mediation as a psychologist. And, often I'm called in, or one of my colleagues who mediates is called in, and just before the mediation goes ahead, it gets cancelled because someone's decided to leave. Or we go through the facilitated process and then afterwards people decide to leave, which I think is okay because people can put their hands on their heart and say, I tried. And, things end. Nothing lasts forever. So I don't see it as a facilitator or consultant as a failure if people decide to leave. And I don't think we should look at ourselves as having failed if a relationship ends, whether it's with our workplace or in our personal lives, because as long as we've tried, as long as we haven't become completely avoidant, which some people do, but we've tried to face the pain, face the challenge, get some help, get some support, and it still didn't work out, there's no shame in that. Sometimes people need to leave their job and find a new one.
That's good, to get comfortable with impermanence. A broader lessons coming back to the workplace. Nothing lasts forever. Any other issues that we need to cover off with you, like gossiping or performance reviews can stress people out? Any other sort of common psychological issues that people will encounter at work that you'd like to talk about?
It's a great question, Ashwin. There's so many issues that we encounter in the workplace, right? Because an organisation is a community with purpose. There's lots of variables and complexity because of all the facets involved. But I always take a needs-based approach, which is, if people are gossiping, what are the needs that they've got that are not being fulfilled or supported, that they're kind of trying to meet, but in a tragic way. If people are quiet quitting and disengaging from their job, it's because they have some needs that are not being supported or being met. So I suggest that if you're a supervisor, see if you can figure out what the needs are of your employees. And if you're an employee, if you're a worker and you're engaging in behaviours that are not in line with your values, whether it's gossiping or quiet quitting or something else, aggression or whatever it may be, ask yourself, what am I needing that I'm not getting? And could I maybe express that to the right person? Because who knows? If you say what you need, what you feel, what you want, things might get better. It's a crazy idea, but it happens.
This comes back to assertiveness, isn't it? Which isn't always taught, but it can make your life easier.
Absolutely. And if we don't know how to do it, there's plenty of resources and professionals out there like myself who can help you out.
On that question of quiet quitting, though, is that on the rise? Are people becoming disillusioned with work and life and society and just sort of doing the whole lie down, quiet quitting arrangement more broadly than they used to?
I mean, that's what I've heard anecdotally from managers and business owners that I've talked to. I don't know from the research. I haven't looked into it. But if there is some truth in that, it's really interesting, huh? Like, why is that the case?
Yeah.
Could it be that, workplaces are not providing the meaning and the purpose that they need to be giving their employees? Do they not have any authority or decision-making power? Like, again, what are their needs? And it's such a complex question because it's a combination of variables that creates these kind of social phenomena. But that's what I've heard anecdotally.
It does. It goes beyond psychology to the workplace culture, to society, to prospects of the future. A lot of issues go into someone's disillusionment. So a big topic, perhaps one for another day, but appreciate your insights into psychology and the workplace today, Rachel.
Let's talk about that another day, Ashwin.
Another day for sure. Dr Rachel Hannam there, who's the Director of North Brisbane Psychologists.